When I first came onto YouTube, one of the biggest discussions that was taking place, and which is still taking place to a certain extent, is that ongoing discussion between theists and atheists, between religious people and people of no religious persuasion. And it was very heated then, and it still occasionally gets heated now, but much less so. And the dividing lines were clearly drawn. But it seems to me that there's a more valid distinction to be made. I don't know if it's just now or whether it's always been around, which isn't so much to do with the content of people's beliefs, but how they use a term like belief at all, really. Because what I see in some aspects of both the atheist and religious communities is an approach to life, the universe and everything, which really rests heavily on terms like belief. And those people use words like believe and real, reality, truth, objective. They use these terms quite a lot, and a lot of it is couched in terms of a kind of an approach to the world which asserts its the firmness of its structure and the capacity that they have as individuals and we have as a society of knowing that with an absolute certainty. And that isn't either it doesn't divide neatly between religious people and atheists. Both religious people and atheists, it seems to me, have that same approach, which in some cases comes across as kind of dogmatic approach to the universe. In others, it's just a kind of much more what looks like kind of nuts and bolts versions of it. In religion, that comes across as almost a quasi-scientific envy for an approach to the world. You know, a lot of creationists, fundamental creationists are like this. They use terms like God and believe and all these kind of things, but they use them almost as alternative descriptions of the world. But the way that the world is described is still as firm, as realizable, as real, as capable of holding truth as anything that a certain kind of science would produce. And the same is true of some atheists. A lot of atheists also have that same approach, which stresses not the same set of beliefs, but a way of investing in a worldview, which again is about belief, truth, real, reality, objectivity, these kind of cast iron certainties about the world. And then there's another group of people, but again not neatly divided across theist-atheist lines, which seem to have a completely different approach, which is to do with, in which words like belief tend not to be used, or are used much more lightly, and words like real and reality are always kind of put in scare quotes and are deemed to be a little bit contingent, and words like objective are always kind of approached a bit tentatively, with lots of qualifications and hedges around that. And a word like truth is again approached delicately as if recognising that truth is at least partially a question of where you're standing and how you look at it. These kind of reservations are always applied. There's a much less cast iron approach and a much more malleable approach. And again, as I say, these aren't theists or atheists. In religious communities, those kind of approaches tend to be, those are held by people who certainly are not fundamentalist religious people at all. Many Christians who I've met on YouTube and outside would take that kind of an approach to their Christianity, and some other faiths do it as well, in which in some ways they're kind of soft, woolly Christians, you might say, or some people would condemn them for being that. But at the same time, there's a sense in which they recognise that they are working with myth, but that's a kind of necessary way for them of working, because myth is a part of the structure of the world in that way of looking at it. And in atheists, it's reflected in a certain kind of scepticism. The kind of scepticism that someone like Sam Harris, I guess, would have as a mainstream atheist, in which there's always a recognition that it's quite possible that we won't know everything, and that our ways of knowing are always going to be contingent on the mechanisms by which we come to know things, our own embodiment, the history of our own consciousness, all of those kind of things. The way that our language functions is always at play within our systems of knowing. So there's always that kind of approach. So it seems to me, as I say, that these two arms, wings, schools of thought are much more representative of communities of difference rather than the old theist, atheist differences. And each has got different kinds of ways of approaching its opposite numbers. You know, if you're one of the cast iron, kind of relatively dogmatic end of that, you know, you use words like real, truth, objective, reality, you know, that's a belief. This is your lexicon. Then you would see the others as kind of woolly or spongy, maybe slightly feminine. It's often gendered, this difference. Maybe feminine, maybe fluffy, floaty, light, spiritual, almost like a volatile spirit, those kind of things. Conversely, if you're on this side of the fence and you're, you know, of a kind of skeptical frame of mind as an atheist, or as a kind of spiritually motivated religious person that doesn't adhere to particular dogmas, if you're on this side of the fence, then you will see your opposites, your opposition there as rigid and dogmatic and blinkered and perhaps insecure, perhaps avoiding uncertainties by retreating to a kind of calcified position. So yeah, so that's what I think is happening at the moment on the old tubes. So I'll be interested to hear what you think. Do you think the theist-atheist divide is as strong as it ever was? Or do you think there's any merit in what I'm offering here, which is a suggestion that a more valid divide is a one between calcification, dogma, belief, truth, reality on one side, and the others on the other, skepticism and religion without belief on the other? Let me know what you think. Bye.